Hi, and you're very welcome to the Final Whistle League of Ireland podcast. We're not talking League of Ireland this week. Of course, it was the weekend of the FAI Cup opening round fixtures. All 20 teams in the draw. 12 non-league sides made it through to this stage as well. And we're going to be talking about some of those later on in the programme. We're joined by Kilnamanagh manager Keith Foy, of course, no stranger to audiences across the league, particularly those in Pats, Sligo Rovers, and a couple of us diehard Dublin City players, our fans, should I say, who got to watch him in the flesh over the years. A naturally talented left back, and we'll be chatting about his wand of a left foot, his teams, I suppose, flowed through the FAI Cup so far, and also maybe a couple of other bits and pieces of interest around Kilnamanagh itself. We'll also be talking about that goal, Glenn McCauley. Nearly 1 million people have seen it on Twitter in the last 48 hours. But we're not going to be talking to Glenn about the goal. We're going to be talking to the voice on that video, and that's Gordon Brett, who is a match commentator in Athlone for their game so far. We're going to be talking to him about the goal, of course. Athlone's win at the weekend. Oh, sorry, it wasn't even Athlone's win. What am I saying? They lost the game on penalties, of course. And we'll be talking about that hugely eventful match, but also about the whole LOITV project as well. And I'm joined, of course, for all of this, I should have done this much earlier, Dean Zambra joins me back again, fresh from his 5-0 win in that very competition at the weekend over Bangor GGFC. It's an amalgamation of a whole load of Dublin clubs up there. Dean, you're very welcome to the programme.
Thanks for having me back. Haven't been on in a while, it seems, but we're back to talk FAI Cup.
Well, I suppose it's not that we haven't had you back. We just haven't been able to get a show out over the last few weeks because of a number of clashes of schedules, a whole lot of stuff. You're an engaged man now. I know you go around tasting cake all over the place. That's the only wedding joke I'll make, I promise. But no, talk to us maybe first of all about your game at the weekend. Bishopsgate, the venue, Bangor in town, 5-0 win. You got to be happy with that.
Yeah, definitely. We needed to just win the game, get into the next round. They can be tricky. It can be banana skins. At this stage of the cup competition, playing a non-league side, and sometimes you don't know a huge amount about who you're playing either. We're lucky enough that we had a little bit of reconnaissance done, and we kind of had a little bit of a plan. And we also knew a couple of players, Derek Prendergast and Davey O'Sullivan and that. So we had a little idea of a couple of the players. But yeah, really important just to get the win and get a couple of goals and all is a good boost in the arm too. So into the next round, I'm happy with that.
Davey O'Sullivan, I'm sure Longford Town fans needed absolutely no introduction to him. Is he the club's top scorer over the years? I know he's definitely up there.
Yeah, club's leading scorer.
Yeah, didn't get one on Sunday, of course, or Saturday, which of course you'll be absolutely delighted about from a defensive point of view at the club. And we'll move quickly through them because there's so many extra games to get through this week. I suppose the biggest talking point of the weekend probably came in the last game. I listened to it live on Ocean on Sunday evening. I happened to be in the car and I listened to Jessica Ferry and Alan Keane, who's normally with us here as well, commentate on the game, and they really cursed it by saying there's been no cup upsets this weekend. It arrived in style. Cork City, themselves no stranger to the cup, but living in a very different universe now than they were a couple of years ago. What did you make of that? Surprise is probably, well, I'm shocked, to be honest, because based on form, you would have expected Sligo to win that every single time.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think everyone expected Sligo to win it and probably quite comfortably, but you just can't take anything for granted in the cup. And we've seen Cork, kind of struggle a little bit in the first division, haven't really hit form, and we've been talking about maybe they're going to, break through, maybe they'll hit a bit of form, maybe some of the young players will step up, and they hadn't up until this point. So it was a big shock, but on any given day, especially in the cup, anything can happen, and probably Cork City deserve to come away winners in the end. I think most people would agree with that.
Yeah, I think so. Of course, Romeo Park scored 2 goals for the Bit of Red, but Binion O'Brien Whitmarsh had pulled one back on 28 minutes before Dale Holland scored the winner. Dylan McGlade, of course, popped in there as well with a penalty on 55 minutes. Nerve-wracking, 8 to 10 minutes of injury time played. Sligo just couldn't find an equaliser. They'll be very, very disappointed with that, particularly given where Cork are at the moment, as we said at the start of the piece. Next up, Wexford FC 3 versus Cabinteely. It's a good, solid victory for Wexford. They weren't playing non-league teams. You kind of, maybe in your own position, you expect to win that game. It's a lose-lose for the club. You don't get any credit for beating them, but all you can do is get any credit when you don't. Wexford were playing league opposition, and they kind of defied the odds coming into it, because I think most people would have expected Cabinteely to get through this on league form at least.
Yeah, and I heard Pat Devlin talking after the game, and he kind of said they were a bit taken aback in a 10-15 minute spell where they ended up being 3-0 down, and pretty much that was game over. They made 4 changes, I think, at half time to try and change it up, but the game's probably lost at that point. But I think there's been steady improvement under Ian Ryan with Wexford, so maybe it's not a huge surprise that they caught someone off guard and got a win. And at this stage of the season for them, a little cup run could be a very good thing as well.
Yeah, of course. 3 first half goals: Kyle Robinson, Jack Doherty, and Jack Moylan. 2 Jacks there. But all those goals scored in the last 10 or 12 minutes of the first half, and I just set them up nicely. Another 2-0 home win for UCD. That's not all that unusual this year, but what is unusual is the opposition defeated. Shelbourne, their first defeat in all competitions this year. They'll be disappointed. They would have been expected no more than the previous game to go and take all to get the place in the second round draw when they travelled over to Belfield.
Yeah, again, probably a bit of a surprise, even though I think it's first against third, is it, in first division terms? But again, you take your eye off the ball and you can get caught out, and go to a place like UCD with very good young players, talented players, and if you're not fully at it or fully kind of committed to the game, that can happen. I'm sure Ian will be disappointed, but I think overall the long-term goal is just to win the league and come up. So maybe they're not all that disappointed, but they probably would have seen themselves having a couple of more games in the cup anyway.
Yeah, a couple of lads on that Shell side maybe haven't had that much action this year, so they'll be disappointed with the performance. But at the same time, UCD into the next round of the Cup, they're always an outside bet for a decent run in the Cup. One side who saw their league, I keep confusing myself with competitions this week. One side who fell out of the Cup on Saturday evening was, of course, Bray Wanderers. They played St. Pat's Friday evening. 6-0 the final score there. Surprised by that, by the size of the score, because I think I didn't see Bray getting beaten by 6 goals in that particular encounter, although Pats have been impressive this season.
Yeah, I think Pats have been really good at times, and obviously that was another one at the weekend. I think Gary be a little surprised that they were beaten so convincingly. He probably thought they would have had a chance, kind of maybe keep it close and try get an upset. But I don't think he rotated too much either. So that was the guts of their first 11 out on the pitch as well. Maybe a couple of changes that were enforced. But I think he'd be a little disappointed with the nature of the defeat. And obviously for Stevie and Pats, they keep flying, so they'll be delighted.
Yeah, in terms of, I suppose, those first divisions versus Premier Division clashes, we look at Pats and Sligo both doing well at the top of the table. Bray, impressive enough form at times this season, as have Cabinteely, as Cork has been poor, and yet we see Cork rising to the challenge, taking on Sligo, beating Sligo, and Bray falling out to 6-0. Where exactly does that fit in your estimation? Because you've played in both of those leagues in the last 2 seasons. Is the gap as big as Pat's win would suggest, or is it as tight as Cork's win would suggest?
I think it's a consistency thing, and I think when you come to the first division, you see that any of the teams can win, lose, or draw every weekend. There doesn't seem to be a kind of consistent, apart from kind of Wexford that have struggled and Shells that have pulled away. The rest is a group of kind of mixed bag. You don't know what you're going to get, and that's probably again what happened at the weekend. Cork City rose to the occasion, got a performance that they haven't probably gotten more than 2 or 3 occasions this season. Bray, on the other hand, have been inconsistent, as we've talked about. They've gone on a couple of little runs of not winning, couple of little runs of winning games, and then they don't turn up for the cup game, So I just think it points to the inconsistency, and probably the main difference between the leagues is, consistent performances are usually attributed to the Premier Division teams and the teams at the top of the Premier Division, and then inconsistency is usually what happens in the first division.
Yeah, speaking of consistency with teams at the top of the Premier Division, Shamrock Rovers 2-0 winners over Galway United. 2 early scores. Rory Gaffney and Dylan Watts opened the score in 17 minutes, 21 minutes respectively. Pretty much game over then. Wasn't really much chance for Galway to get back into that. Will they be disappointed, or will they be just focusing back on maybe their league campaign, which has picked up speed in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think John will just hope that doesn't derail the good form in the league. If they had got anyone else, maybe apart from Rovers away, they might have thought about a nice little cup run. But Rovers away is a tough out for them, and I think they'll just focus on the league and hope it doesn't make a dent in their league form. And for Rovers, it just seemed a little bit routine, and they keep plugging away on a couple of different fronts.
Yeah, of course. Friday night, plenty of non-league teams in the competition, as we spoke about, 12 in total. There were 4 all non-league clashes between 4 sides from the various intermediate leagues and junior leagues around the country. The first one of those we're going to talk about is Maynooth University Town and Malahide United out in the university in Maynooth. Malahide United always been thereabouts. 4-0 though, final score to Maynooth University Town, and Paddy O'Sullivan with a hat-trick as part of that. It's kind of one of those things where you don't really know what you're getting week in, week out with these Leinster Senior League sides, but Maynooth would be delighted with that. I know they had a bit of a cup run a couple of seasons ago. Could they be an outside bet for maybe a quarter-final or a semi-final spot?
Yeah, I don't see why not. They've actually been a very good side for a couple of years now and kind of made very good progress there. So, you like you said, you never know, and they might catch a team, they might catch a League of Ireland First Division team or Premier Division team that doesn't know a huge amount about them. And again, you get that situation where a cup game, a one-off, you get everybody up for the game, and there's a huge motivation for those non-league teams. So I'm sure they're thinking, why not? And again, there's a possibility they draw another non-league team in the next round too. So they'll be probably thinking, why not? Why not go on a cup run and keep the kind of last couple of years of decent form and decent cup runs going?
Yeah, no, there's definitely a couple of extra non-league teams floating around in that last 16 draw, which happens tomorrow evening as we're recording this Tuesday evening. So probably this evening as people are listening. It's kind of one of those things. Do you take a non-league draw, or do you take a scalp? Do you want to bring a Shamrock Rovers to your patch and have a crack at them, or do you want maybe a relatively easier passage potentially to an FAI quarterfinal? One of those things. We might talk to Keith Foy about that later on in the show. In terms of Premier Division teams getting knocked out, only 2. We've already talked about Sligo. Drogheda United, the only other side not in that draw tomorrow evening. They went out on penalties to Derry City, 2-4 on the penalties, but 1-1 after the game. 2 sending-offs here for Drogheda. They finished the game with 9 men. Dane Massey sent off for what looked like, based on some of the photographic evidence I saw floating around, relatively uncertain whether it hit his arm, whether it hit his upper chest, but sent off for stopping the ball on the line. James Brown, of course, then sent off for second yellow towards the end of the game. But they did well considering they played 120 minutes, only conceded in the last minute of injury time as well. Your thoughts on Derry versus Drogheda?
I know Connor Hoey and Kevin Doherty were both very upset after the game and spoken in different media outlets about it. Like, Dane's one's very hard to see. I don't know if it's a definitive handball or not. Like you said yourself, there's screenshots on the video, and it's very difficult to see. With Jimmy Brown, it seemed kind of obvious it was a penalty, didn't it? It looked like he was fouled, and even if he wasn't fouled or the referee deems it wasn't enough, it definitely didn't seem like he dived and to then subsequently send him off. So I think they can probably feel very hard done by. And then even on top of that, they done so well with 9 players to kind of gut it out and still didn't get the result. So I think they can probably feel a little bit hard done by. And at the stage of the season they're in, they're probably, quite safe from relegation, something that might have been on the radar at the start of the season. So a cup run could have been great for them, and they might have been looking at it as an opportunity to win a trophy, to go along with their good league form. So I think they'll be bitterly disappointed that it ended in that way and in that manner. And then again, for Derry, it doesn't matter, does it? They're in the next round, so they don't really care. Like, at the end of the day,
it's cup football. All that matters. Now we do have to get through 5 or 6 more games before we get to Keith Foy, who's going to be joining us really, really shortly to talk about that Kilnamanagh victory at the weekend. Fairview Rangers, they went down to Finn Harps. Kind of to be expected here.
Yeah, but in extra time, sorry, not in normal time. So I think the first goal is important. So once it came, I think that probably settled Harps down a little bit more, and then they seen it out, and then probably the higher level of fitness once it had gone into extra time then as well told. So probably what we expected, but maybe not expected extra time. That's all.
Yeah, no. Some of the junior performances of the Fairview are junior side, but some of the intermediate junior performances this weekend have been really, really good. One of those other all non-league clashes, Killester Donecarney and Usher Celtic. Very little between these two sides. It was an Owen Fowler strike that separated those two teams at the end. Killester will be happy in the next round. Usher disappointed, obviously.
Yeah, I think there was a noise coming out of Usher, that they could maybe do something, or they would have liked a couple of rounds in the cup, and they would have fancied maybe won the League of Ireland team. So they'd be a little bit disappointed that they couldn't push past Leicester and then get into the half of the next round. But a great result for Leicester, and they get potentially a good draw for themselves in the next round.
Yeah, down in Limerick as well, alongside Fairview. Treaty United, of course, flying the Limerick flag over the weekend. Dundalk in town. It took them long enough, but Patrick McElhenney, I'm not even sure how much he knew about it, deflected off the Limerick player into the back of the net. Treaty, that would have been a big scalp for Treaty had they managed to even get that to penalties.
Yeah, and just what we expect from Tommy's teams now and Treaty every week is a difficult game for the opposition. And that was actually one I looked at over the whole weekend and said they could win, or they could definitely cause an upset or a really tight game. I didn't see it being a big victory for Dundalk down there, and I'm sure they knew that themselves going down, and they got a hell of a run for their money, didn't they? So again, from the Dogs' point of view, happy to be in the next round, and Treaty would be a little bit disappointed, but I think the journey they're on in the first division so far this season, they're just going to keep playing away with that, and whatever comes of it is a bonus to them,
Yeah, I think their playoff target is probably more important than a cup run just at the moment for Treaty. Liffey Wanderers, they were in the UCD Bowl on Sunday afternoon. They played Cove Ramblers Sunday morning, actually, 11 a.m. kickoff. That was another situation where a first division team or a League of Ireland side struggled to break down a non-league side 2-0 eventually. Again, 2 goals in injury time. Just a little bit of extra fitness probably paid off.
Yeah, exactly. You expect the League of Ireland team to win out in the end, but you're also expecting, the non-league side to put it up to them, and that's exactly what you got. Cove couldn't quite break them down, but eventually, as time wore on, they eventually found gaps and were able to, secure the win and get into the half.
Yeah,
and not an easy place to go in the next round as well. So if anyone gets Cove Ramblers away, that's not an easy draw. So they could have their roles reversed the next time. Like someone could be coming to them and they couldn't be really putting it up to someone else,
Yeah, we might have a chat with Keith about that in a couple of minutes when we do sit down and have a chat with him. Crumlin United won St. Moctus 2, an all Dublin derby here. Moctus were delighted to be into the next round, but I think that's really all it's about at this stage. It's just that survival. Make sure your name is in the next hat, right?
Yeah, and they got 2-0 up and probably thought they were kind of home and hose, but a goal from Crumlin obviously brought the game back, and it was on a knife edge then a little bit, but they'll be happy enough to be in the next round and to get one over on a rival Leinster Senior League side as well and get into the half of the next round. That's what it's about, especially this first round is getting into the next round and seeing where it takes you.
Yeah, and finally, I suppose before we go and have a chat with Keith, we're going to just have a quick talk about Athlone Town versus Waterford. We're going to be talking to Gordon Brett about it very shortly, but that goal, that's all I can say. I actually paid for the last 7 or 8 minutes of the stream. I don't know why. I just said I need to watch this, and it was about 7 minutes extra time left, and I thought Waterford had robbed me of the penalties that I paid for, and then that just happened. I nearly fell out of my seat. Did you get a chance to see that at all?
Just highlights. Didn't get to see the full game, but I think even because of the goal and what it meant, and this clip is doing the rounds and all the rest of it, people don't realise how good the game was either. I think it's gone under the radar, that this unbelievable game unfolded, to even get to that point, and there's a little bit of context missing from seeing the clip as well, that they'd conceded a goal in the 123rd minute, I think it was, and this was tip off in the 124th minute of the game. This wasn't just kind of the 70th minute and there was a goal and Glenn hits one and equalises. It's literally the last kick of the game in the last portion of extra time, and after 120 minutes of action, it was incredible. You can't write it.
Well, we're going to find out about all the atmosphere at that game and all the events with Gordon Brett in 15 minutes or so. But first, let's have a chat with Keith Foy, who joins us now. Keith, you are very, very welcome to the programme.
Thanks, lads. Cheers. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Listen, we watched the game with great intent over the weekend play out. You must be really, really happy with the way your side performed, the fact that you're in the second round of the Cup. That's really what it's all about, though.
Yeah, exactly. Look, it was always, when we headed out to St. Kevin's, we were obviously the favourites, but it was always going to be a tough game out there. And I knew if we weren't at it on the night, we could have potentially went out of the Cup. But to be fair to the lads, they put a good shift in, and the quality came through in the end then. And we took our chances in the second half, and the last 20 minutes was was a comfortable game, should we say, for the last 20 minutes. But the lads have done the hard work previous to that, you know.
How you doing, Keith?
Seeing how you, pal, Gary?
Yeah, a lot of League of Ireland fans maybe that listen here like won't know a lot about the kind of junior clubs and the intermediate clubs, like, but they'll know a few of your lads, and particularly kind of Connor, Gary, Dean. Like, what does it mean for your squad and your lads having that kind of League of Ireland experience, specifically in the FAI Cup games? Like,
yeah, no, listen, obviously there's a lot of experience there, and the lads have racked up a number of appearances in the League of Ireland between them. I think Conor Kenna alone has over 450 games. I know Dean has over 200 games. Gary has over 200 games. So they have a lot of experience. And it helps the lads in them games, even in our league campaign and everything else. And having the calibre of players that we have there, like we have the 3 boys there. Obviously, we've another 3 or 4 lads that played League of Ireland, 1 or 2 that have been across in England. For the whole area, for children, for kids to come and look at the games. They're looking at maybe lads that were their heroes a couple of years ago, you know, playing for Shamrock Rovers and playing for St. Pat's and everything else. So for the area and for the club as a whole, it's excellent. I just got really lucky over the last couple of years that a lot of these lads are from the area and they're maybe coming to the end of their time in League of Ireland. And I managed to convince them to hang on for another year or 2 and have a kick around with the local team, which has done nothing but wonders for the whole area, as I said, and the club as a whole. And it brought us to a level we've never thought we'd achieve. You know, like 3 seasons ago, we were playing 4 leagues off the top league, and now to be in the top league and competing in the second round of the FAI Cup, I think it's something that we all never would have expected, you know, and all them lads have obviously helped to bring us to where we are today, you know.
I think, to be fair, Keith, on that, like every group of 3 lads has like hundreds of appearances in the League of Ireland. So the 3 of us between us must have 600 or so anyway, you know. In terms of, I suppose, your own experience in the game, and you talk about being lucky for the last 3 years, but I think a lot of that is probably you just passing maybe some of that success on to others as well, because the catalyst for that seems to have been your appointment 3 years ago. Struggling to start the season a couple of years ago. Maybe lost the first 4 or 5 or 6 games of the season, looking in trouble just to survive in that. It's called junior, or it's called the senior 1B, and then of course 1A1, and then the senior division on top of that. So you're the 4th tier, battling for survival. But to even come out of that with just staying up, never mind the actual promotion that you got, and it's been 3 successive promotions in what is a very competitive league. The Leinster Senior League is probably the most competitive competition outside of the National League itself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it was 3 or 4 years ago. I actually I was up at Bluebell at the time, and I said I was taking a year out of football. I kind of hadn't had a rest since I was a kid, really, you know. And obviously Kilnamanagh was my local club, and they were in a little bit of trouble at the time. And the aim was to come in and try and stabilise them and just make sure they held on to intermediate as such. But as the results kept going, we kept climbing away from the other end of the table, and all of a sudden we were up near the top with about 10 games to go, it was, and I think we needed to win 9 of them, and we ended up winning 9 and lost 1 the last 10. So that got the first promotion. Obviously then we signed 1 or 2, and that was a catalyst then for every transfer window. It was easier to attract players because you're getting the promotions, seeing the caliber of players coming in. As you said, the McCabes, the Kavanaghs, the Colemans, they all were the first group to come in. Then obviously that attracted a few more players, but we had quality in the squad as well. Like, there's a lot of lads that played Kilnamanagh nearly all their life, and there was quality there. They just maybe weren't directed in the right ways. And obviously, then playing with the lads that they're playing with now, it's after bringing them on further as well, you know.
Keith, you touched on the kind of what it means to the community and playing in the FAI Cup for the senior team and that, but what does it mean for like the junior club and all? Because I know, speaking to Connor over a couple of years, like you've done a lot of great work there as a club. It's not just the senior team progressing in the Leinster Senior League or the FAI Cup, but it's the whole community and the underage setup. So what does the whole lot mean to the kind of community area there in terms of football in that area?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, Connor came in about 2 years ago as youth development officer, and he's after taking the club to a new level from a youth point of view. I think we've 33 teams now in the whole club, with seniors, schoolboys, school girls, and this little run we're on now, the FAI Cup. It's certainly opening people's eyes, I think, to the club as a whole. It's a lot easier to attract the parents to bring their children up to the club, when they see what's going on around the club, when they see how we are progressing both on and off the pitch. A lot of hard work was in behind the scenes from all the committee lads. There's a lot of volunteers that make their lives a lot easier, and it's certainly helping the whole club and everything as a community, you know.
Yeah, I suppose it's fantastic to see it. I've done a bit of research in the club as well in terms of the whole effort that's put in there, because it's very easy sometimes for these levels of clubs to just focus primarily on that first team, and to see the kind of the youngsters and the photographs on the website and stuff like that, actually, of people coming through the club. It's fantastic to see it. In terms of yourself, of course, a noted underage international with Ireland. Of course, you were at Nottingham Forest at the time, but you're one of Kerr's kids. You won a European Championship with Ireland, even managed to be heavily involved in the final. You've a sweet left foot. Tell us about that experience, because I'm sure your own players have come through with you as a role model as well, not just the Gary McCabes of this one.
Yeah, listen, that was a time that will stick with me for the rest of my life, you know. Even when I'm in the pubs, everyone always seems to come up to me and talk about that time back in 98, 23 years ago now. But that's something that will live with me. And even as a group of people that we had in that squad to this day, we're all in a WhatsApp group, and even today they put something up in the WhatsApp group, and it was just a little clip of us arriving in the airport, and you actually forget them moments, you know. We arrived back in the airport, and there was thousands of people in the airport welcoming us home. We had an open top bus and everything else, you know. So it was certainly a special occasion, not just for us and our personal, but for Irish football. We obviously won in '98, and then 6 weeks later, the under-18s won it, you know. It was a fun time to be involved in Irish football, you know.
Might be hard to pick out a favourite player from that group, Keith, but who do you reckon was the best at the time, even like out of those lads?
It's a tough one, you know, because obviously you have a lot of talented lads in that squad, and I'd probably say the most natural talented in it was probably Andy Reid, you know. Andy had a lot of talent. He had a hell of a left foot on him. But obviously you look at, and he went on to have a fantastic career himself. Got a lot of caps internationally and all, but you obviously look at John O'Shea and what he went on to do, winning Premier League titles, winning European Cup. So he was always the model professional, shall we say. He always looked after himself, and if you're ever stepping out of line, even at that young age, he make sure he let you know, you know. He was a fantastic lad to have around the team, have around the squad. And it showed, it wasn't a fluke what he went on to achieve, you know. I think Alex Ferguson once even said about him, he was one of his most important players, you know. I think that says a lot for someone when someone like that says about you, considering the players Alex Ferguson's had at his disposal, you know.
Now, I know we asked you to talk about Kilnamanagh tonight and what's going on there, but I do have a little bit of a confession as well. I was involved with Dublin City back in the day, and I know you spent a little while there. I think it was your first club back in the League of Ireland after Nottingham Forest, or after you came back from England. And sweet left foot. There's some really, really good nights. Do you remember any of that? Do you kind of look back on that fondly? Because you're probably one of the better players in that squad. You scored some great goals from the penalty spot, from free kicks as well. I think there was one against Bows in particular that sticks in the mind, a 2-1 win in Dalewith that I'm pretty sure you're on the score sheet for that night. Any thoughts, any memories for me, please?
No, I do. I have a lot of memories of playing for Dublin City. Unfortunately, I think the memory that sticks to me was when I got sacked by Roddy Collins. You know, he kind of hung me out to dry. One of the games he asked me to play for the under-21s on a Sunday it was, and he organised a little night out on the Saturday. But we all went on the night out, and I went and played for the under-21s on the Sunday. But he called me at training then on the Tuesday and said, "You're sacked without pay for being out 24 hours before the game." But it was kind of like, Roddy, you told me to go out and you told me to play the next day. So that was probably it wouldn't be me greatest moment, but it's probably one that sticks out in my head because that was the end of my Dublin City career, you know.
Yeah, Roddy ended a couple of Dublin City careers, to be fair. You're in plenty of good company on that one.
Yeah.
You were replaced by Karen Palmer then at that point, was it?
I was going to say, he was trying to get in F in the Coke on Karen Palmer at the time, so he had to get me off the wage bill. But I don't think my wage was anywhere near as much as what the lads got coming over, you know.
Well, listen, Keith, it's been great chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on a fantastic win at the weekend. 4-1, of course. We didn't actually mention that. It was a 4-1 victory for yourselves in that particular game against St. Kevin's boys. I suppose you'll be waiting with bated breath to see who you get in the next round of the Cup. What are you doing tomorrow evening? You going to go for a walk and see who you get, or will you be listening to it live?
No, I'll be listening to it. We actually have training tomorrow at 7 o'clock, so the draw's on at 6:30. So I think if a few of the lads are going to arrive a little bit early, and we're going to all listen to the training ground. Listen, hopefully we can get a big local draw. That's what we're all hoping for, I think, But whatever happens, we'll take,
Excellent. Well, listen, the best of luck, and I'm sure we'll be chatting to you at some stage later in the season. Maybe even a cup semi-final or final appearance. You could pull up St. Francis.
Who knows? Us and Longford in the final. Dara would like that, I think. I think Dara would like that.
Yeah, I think Dean will be happy enough with that too as well.
100%.
Listen, thanks a million. We'll talk to you again shortly. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Now, of course, we talked earlier in the programme about being joined by the voice of that clip that was touching on 1 million. I'm sure by the time you're listening to this and watching this podcast, it will be at 1 million views on Twitter over the weekend. Gordon Brett, you're very welcome to the programme.
Thanks for having me, Breifne. Great to be here.
No problem. I watched it live the other night. I was said earlier in the show how I was sitting, we cover all the games on every weekend, but I was sitting and we had all the games covered. It was the only game in extra time at that time. And I said, I haven't been watching it, but I'll pay the $5 and I'll go and watch the last 10 minutes. I might get penalties. And I thought Waterford had ruined my plans to watch penalties. And then, I suppose, talk us through what happened, because you were in the ground. You were the one we were listening to. What were your thoughts? I suppose, what were your thoughts in the build-up to that last 5 minutes before Waterford scored, and kind of how things were building up for
Yeah. Well, I suppose, firstly, I'm a coach in the club, and as you know, I'm head coach of the 14th.
Former player as well, to be fair. Like, I probably would have saw your introduction.
Yeah, but that's ancient stuff. But to be fair, I do. I help Cabs a little bit every now and again with coaching, and I do all the video analysis of opposition and stuff. And so it's great when I go into a game like that. That I have a good idea. I'd have an idea what Waterford set pieces are going to be like, because you've clipped them and you've looked at them, and you've used Y Scout and stuff. And I suppose Athlone were 2 down. Waterford were a good side. They're a side that I think that they're odds on to catch Finn Harps at this stage, and stay up in their own right. But they're doing really well. And but Athlone were 2 down. Then the sending off of Wordsworth just totally changed the game. Athlone came back into it. I mean, obviously Glenn McCauley with 2 penalties. Put them right in it, and then they're 3-2 up, and you're thinking, great, this is, Athlone are going through again, because we beat Premier Division opposition in Shelburne last season in the quarterfinal. And next thing, late drama in, sort of pretty much extra time or injury time of the 90 minutes, and it's 3-3. Suddenly Waterford are back in it. Athlone then, kind of owned the ball really in extra time. Waterford, came at them a couple of times on the break, threw on the last 2 subs they had. There's a lot of drama, as on the sideline. Waterford manager sent off, Belly is sent off, Cabsy is sent off. I think the fitness guy from Waterford was sent off. It was crazy. The attendance in the stand really doubled in the space of 5 minutes. And next thing, Waterford get a goal in pretty much injury time of extra time, and you're thinking, that's it. You're kind of devastated. And just all I noticed then was, about 8, it must have been about 8, you'd see it on the video, about 8 Athlone players lined up on the left-hand side, and I think in the commentary line you're trying to keep with it, and you're trying to stay kind of stable as such, and you're thinking, they're going to just guide this one up, get bodies under it and see what happens, because the game was up, and suddenly Glenn McCauley just does that. And I suppose, we're amateur kind of commentators as such. It's something I've done a bit of, but we're just lucky that we caught it, because there was kind of mayhem at the time, and there was really just, it was chaos in the ground, and Waterford obviously had been celebrating, and we pretty much said, yeah, that's the winner. And then Glenn McCauley just does that, and it's just unbelievable what he's done. It's hard to commentate on, actually, because we ran out of words. Tommy Hewitt was with me, and Tommy has done the last couple of games. As you know, Tommy is the head coach of the women's senior team. He's an ex-Athlone player himself, and Tommy kind of lost it a little bit as well. So, he's the one who came out with Take a Bow, son. So he's got a bit of slagging over that. But yeah, all in all, I thought then with that moment, maybe Athlone would go back into the penalty shootout, kind of maybe just a little bit more pep in their step, and it just didn't work out. And in fairness to Paul, the keeper Martin, like he redeemed himself as such, because he took a little bit of criticism, and the goal cam, you've probably seen the goal cam from behind the goal, and I think what happens to him is actually he sees that Athlone kind of group of players. It'll be on his right hand side, is from behind the goal, making that charge. He takes a couple of yards, not that far, just to the right and forward, and then McCauley obviously hits that. And I don't think anybody and any keeper in the world would have envisaged that shot. So it's a real one-off. But credit to Glenn McCauley. He was fabulous on the night. Just forgetting about that goal, his overall performance was unbelievable. The amount of, he's coming from a full-time setup in Shells, and he worked really hard all night. Took his penalties really well, and there was a chance then I was saying that he could end up the villain, because if he'd missed his penalty in the shootout, which he didn't, he kept his head. He went to the bottom left for his third penalty, but credit to the Waterford keeper. He redeemed himself and the team in the end.
The atmosphere in the ground, Gordon, seemed to be electric at the time, and I think we were lucky enough, I suppose, that some fans were in, and there wasn't a completely empty ground for that type of game. But do you think a goal like that going viral and that kind of clip can be a catalyst for Athlone? Like, I know it's been a couple of years kind of in the doldrums a little bit, but do you think something like that can ignite kind of a passion in the town again and get kind of people back and really raise the kind of profile of the club again and get more bodies in the stands?
Yeah, I think so. And I think as COVID eases off, the one tragedy for the club this year is that when the team started the season really, really, really well, Dean, nobody was allowed in the grounds, and it was just a pity at that stage that people weren't able to come in, because you'd be getting close to 1,000 people, and that would help fund the club, and run it and keep the squad kind of strong. But no, I think the goal itself, I think there's a great buzz around about it. Obviously, it's gone viral. I have a friend in Thailand, and he sent me a message this morning saying he's after seeing it, and it's kind of weird. He's out there for a couple of weeks. He's saying, he's hearing our voices on two lads that he knows from Athlone in Thailand, and so it's gone viral. It's no harm, the positive PR around it for the club. But at the end of the day, Dean, it was. I remember my overriding feeling leaving the ground actually was that we're out of the cup, and it's kind of like last year we got the semi-final. Obviously that didn't work out, but against a very good Dundalk side. But I just felt it's a pity we're out. They put up a great show. The sending off changed the game, but Athlone took their opportunities then after that. It was just a pity the way it ended. But ultimately, it's about trying to get into playoff spots, because I've been saying it for a long time. Shells are out of sight. And I'm an ex-Galway player, and I'd love to see Athlone and Galway in the Premier Division. But I have great friends in Galway, but I don't think Galway are on a great run. I think they've left it too late to catch Shells. I think Shells were magnificent down in Athlone. We commentated on that game the week before, myself and Tommy. Shells were magnificent. They're in really good shape. The rotations, they're just a fabulous side, well drilled, really professional. So for Athlone, it's really about, can we get into playoffs? And I think that goal has given them a little bit of a lift. It's just a pity that the cup run that didn't get going, really.
Yeah, absolutely. But talk to us about LOITV in its entirety, because it's been a new venture for a lot of the clubs in the league itself, really, over the last couple of months, especially since the clubs have really been given the opportunity to put their own production into that. There's a big team, I know, behind the scenes in Athlone. Tell us a bit about maybe what it's been like to be part of that, and maybe where you might be likely to take that in the coming weeks, months, seasons ahead.
Yeah, look, it's all credit to a guy called Anthony Quinn, Quinn AV. The end of last season, when we looked at the idea of streaming a couple of games, I think we did our last two. I think we did Bray Wanderers, and I think a UCD game, and I think Bray Wanderers is what we did, and we did a women's game, Breifne. I think you're aware of I think we did Bows as well, and the women versus Bows and women's senior team. And that was just ourselves on YouTube. But Anthony came in, he contacted us out of the blue. His Quinn AV is his business. That's what he works at. He just said to us, listen, there's no business out there because there was nothing happening with COVID and restrictions all over the country. So he said he'd come in, and he sponsored it. He brings in all his production. He's so much equipment there. And so we just, I say it every week, we just come in and commentate. We say what we see. We do a bit of research on the opposition. Obviously, I know the Athlone set up intimately, but Anthony has been fabulous. He's brought in, the sideline cam, the replays, some very good graphics. And a couple of weeks ago, he put those cameras behind the goals as well. So for us as commentators, albeit kind of amateur ones, we have a very professional setup wrapped around us. And even for incidents, like there was no joking, Athlone could have had potentially another two penalties during the game. But it was great for us to kind of see those on replay and catch a lot of that stuff. I mean, he's there, he captures the replays for us, and he'll get them up for us. And it's great for the viewers as well, but I suppose they're seeing what we see then as well. But the production is the key thing behind it. And I suppose the LOI TV thing has been brilliant for fans to see the games during the kind of restrictions. And I don't know where it goes after this, because if fans go back into the grounds, brilliant. But I suppose it's a service that we'd all love to see still there after the grounds open up again. I've enjoyed it anyway. I know Tommy Hewitt has done the last two games with me. Tom Silk, he's an ex-Longford player, Dean, actually, but I don't talk to Tommy about that kind of stuff. But I think he's ex-Galway as well. And so Tom has done a lot of the games with me as well. And we've enjoyed it. It's good fun. And it's made us think a little bit more about the game and preparation when we go in to watch it. But hopefully it's something that stays there. I think the league could benefit from it. And the fact that all the women's games are free as well, I think that's something that's been a massive boost, because some of the women's games have been even more exciting. Athlone at Piedmont on Saturday evening. And really, again, I couldn't make that game, but it was by all accounts, it was a fabulous game. There was another goal line incident, and there's a lot of talk whether the ball is over the line and stuff. But it really, Piedmont are a top side. To beat Athlone 2-1, I think Anya Gorman, got a goal there to win it. But there's so much good stuff happening in that women's league as well. It's fabulous that those games are going out live.
Yeah, and we bring you back onto the pitch there, Gordon, with the first team in Athlone. You mentioned it had a great start, then a little bit of a dip. So what does success look like for the team? Is it has to be a playoff spot, or a realistic attempt at going up through the playoffs? Like, what do you see as being a successful outcome to the year?
Yeah, I think at this stage, I think the minimum target has to be just get into the playoffs first, see where it takes us. Like, as you know, as a first team, we can kind of bottom two for a long number of years, and but a lot of that, the club will tell you, the people behind the scenes, that some of that was a little bit self-inflicted as such, because they wanted to get some underage structures in place, work on the facilities around the stadium. There's been a lot of work added on, and the artificial pitch has been a huge boost to the underage academies. We all train in. I'm head coach of the 14s. We all train in the stadium. We play in the stadium mostly. So they forsook kind of first team success to kind of get the structures a little bit in place. They're still working on that. There's a lot of good things happening. There was a new gym put into the stadium, kind of the tail end of last season. But they did put more money into the first team this year. And I have to credit Adrian Carberry. I played with Adrian right through from underage with the Athlone Town first team. I played him in junior football as we went over the hill, as it was. And to be fair to him, he's brought a real buzz about it. He got a very good squad together this year. They're working very hard, and he's a very positive guy. So I think minimum target will be playoff, and hopefully you don't know in the playoffs where you can end up. It's a couple of games, and whether you end up playing Waterford, Finn Harps, Longford in a playoff, maybe Athlone and Longford might be a nice relegation promotion playoff team. Big one. I think both grounds will be full, but if that's in October, November, the both grounds will be very full. But it's not the minimum target, I suppose, at this stage, and just they're up against some well-financed teams in Shells and Galway who are full-time setups, to be fair. And Adrian has brought the part-time setup to as close as a full-time level as he can. And he's done really, really well, and all credit to him, because he's a good guy, and he deserves every bit of luck he can get,
Yeah, in terms of one other thing that's caught my attention while we've been chatting here is incidents that happen in games. You mentioned the goal, did it cross the line or not, with Piedmont at the weekend, but also I suppose the turning point of the game in the FAI clash, the cup clash with Waterford, was the sending off, and I saw replays of that again, and to be able to have that so clearly out, your own thoughts on that? Did the ball cross the line? Was it a free? Or was it a throw-in? Should it have been a yellow card? Was the ref a bit harsh on him? Or was it fairly deserved? You couldn't tell from the camera angle whether the ball had actually gone to a teammate, as people claimed. I know Wordsworth came out and tweeted himself. What's the situation? What did you think?
Well, I think initially we looked at him. We felt the referee was going kind of very stringently along the letter of the law and gave the yellow for what he deemed was kicking the ball away. I don't really think he did, to be honest. I think Anthony Wordsworth can feel a little bit hard done by. I'm not one for criticising referees, because overall, and we said it every week in our commentaries, we've been lucky that the referee in the stadium across the board has been very good this season. I have to say, I've been very impressed with it. Maybe the other night was maybe a little bit of a change from that, but if I was Anthony Wordsworth, I would be a little bit shocked. But I often wonder whether if a guy has a yellow card already for something like a bad challenge, and something that's a little bit minor comes along like that, like kicking a ball away, I think maybe there's a case for maybe not pulling out the second yellow. If it's a second bag challenge, maybe yes, or if it's dissent or something, I think maybe it's something that might have to be looked at. I'm not sure, because it really put, it shook up the game all right, but it really put Waterford under pressure, and it could have been the reason Waterford were knocked out of the cup. No, it would have suited us in Athlone, but as the Watford fans and Mark Bircham and Dave Bell and these guys, I mean, obviously they kind of probably, Mark Bircham, I think when they scored the goal to kind of equalise at 3-3, his side of the story of what we gather is that he just threw the bottle down in celebration, and it was picked up as being sort of, I don't know, obviously throwing a bottle, but he got sent for that, and I kind of going, to me, if that's the case, it's a bit ridiculous as well. And again, I don't mean to get in and start slagging the officials, but yeah, if that's what happened to Mark Bircham, you'd be kind of going, saying, yeah, it's harsh. It is harsh.
Yeah, like you want a bit of the emotion in the game, otherwise it's just sterile. And what's the point? Gordon, I suppose we've run out of time. But Dean, if you've anything else, if you want to just get a last dig in before we let this Athlone man leave.
No, we'll leave the digs on the pitch or not on the pitch, as you don't want anyone sent off. But we'll do our battling on the pitch, I should say, I suppose.
Just before I let you go, actually, I know we've crossed paths over the years, Gordon, I suppose in a different context. In your day job with Athlone IT, you're the head of the sports department down there. You're head of sport in the college. Fantastic facilities built up there during your time in the college. I'm sure you've played a huge part in that. What's the role of the IT now within the club? Because I know there has been kind of maybe times where you've been involved in the club, or not say you, but Athlone IT have been more involved in the club than others. We see other clubs coming up with scholarship programs. What's the current state of play between the two institutions? You've been back involved. Does that mean that there's a bit more of a push to get the club involved in the IT and vice versa?
Yeah, well, I suppose we're working hard on trying to get our heads together on a number of ideas. And first and foremost, this year what we worked very well on is some interns from our athletic therapy course and sports science courses have come into the club. We had S&C coaches working with all of our underage academy teams, and to be fair to Michael O'Connor, he's head of youth development and he's technical director of the club, so he insisted that to kind of prioritise the underage teams for the S&C interns and the athletic therapy people. So that was the first point. I know for the region we need to look at getting an ETB course in, and that's something that could probably benefit Longford Town and Athlone Town. We don't have one in our region, It's something that other clubs have. It gives clubs an opportunity to maybe have a sort of a full-time setup with players doing a little bit of study, maybe give them a pathway into third level into us. Third level football is a very good level at the moment, well organised. And I suppose really the other stuff then would be the scholarship stuff, and that's something we're working on now, because as such we've taken cash directly out of our scholarships and pumped the money that we would have given out into supports for our students. So it's a true scholarship program in terms of academic support, nutrition support, sports psychology, time management, all of the S&C, all of those areas, athletic therapy. So we've kind of put a system around it rather than just handing out cash, and that's something that we can tie in hopefully soon with the club. And we're going to see, I think we probably get more benefits from the women's game this year than the men's. It looks like we've a lot of Senior League of Ireland players now, young girls that are playing League of Ireland 18, 19, coming into third level. We'd be hoping to recruit some of those and strengthen up the women's program first and foremost, and maybe the men's team will come on after that.
Excellent. Well, listen, it all sounds very, very positive for both the IT and the club. Soccer seems to be rising in Athlone. Glenn Macaulay, huge part of that on Friday night as well. Gordon, thank you so much for joining us. Pleasure to have you as always. And I'm sure we'll be talking to yourself and your colleagues in Athlone through the rest of the season with that playoff push in mind.
Brilliant, guys. And listen, thanks and fair play for all the great work you're doing with the podcast. It's excellent. And it's great to see people talking about League of Ireland football at every level.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Gordon.
Yes, Gordon.
Thank you. See you guys.
Thanks.
Gordon Brett there in Athlone. An interesting take maybe on that viral video over the weekend. Dean, I suppose how important is it? I suppose you're well aware of the benefits of these viral hits in terms of, I suppose, your own partner Stephanie, your own fiance. Stephanie had that experience herself maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago, and we see this now because we now have these goals and these incidents live on social media. Sometimes within minutes of that happening, the immediateness of that and the I suppose the quick reaction that people can actually go, oh my god, and it's shared around the world in seconds now. How important is it that clubs really embrace that? Some have really got to it, and others still, you can't even get a team sheet from their Twitter a day or two after the game. And then there's very few of them, but there are still some across the two leagues, the men's and the women's. What's your own thoughts on how clubs have embraced that?
I think it should be standard, like that. There's just goals up straight away, and like I think we're a little bit guilty of not being clever in the league, like to promote ourselves at times. Like, there's obviously been a huge amount of talk about what the FAI have done or have not done, and same with clubs. But like some of this stuff is simple, like clip a goal, get it on Twitter, get it out there straight away. And like you said, most have done it really well recently, and we've seen a couple of cracking goals over the last couple of seasons go viral instantly. And even if you go back to Steph's one, like it didn't go up for about 10 days after she scored, because it was like obviously recorded, and then it didn't actually go like ultra viral till a year later when it was nominated for the goal. Like, so we're doing it better now with these goals. Like, we're getting them out quicker, we're getting them out sharper, we're getting them around. Like you said, people are commenting on them immediately, and that's really important, because you don't want to see a goal that's scored and then like 10 days later or 2 weeks later, like, oh, what team was that, or where are they from? You're seeing it straight away. It's Athlone Town, it's Glenmacall, it's the FAI Cup, and whether you're in England or Europe or anywhere else, you're immediately getting that information, which obviously translates to people saying, well, I might check in on that league more often, or I might look at a game, or I might, see what they're doing in terms of streaming games and things like that. And it's just a whole kind of connected bubble then of information that gets passed around. So I think some of the clubs, like you said, aren't brilliant at it, but there should be a set standard, like a training course or something, like where they all know exactly what to do if they do happen to catch one of these goals.
Yeah, I think for me that was the big disappointment about LOITV breaking away from Watch LOI, where it was done. Okay, people have their issues with RTE, that's fine. I'm not going to get into any of that, but I thought having one production company looking after all of the games, I think it allowed them to set a standard at that level. I'm a little bit disappointed to see it go out to individual clubs. I think Athlone are an example. We have Gordon on, obviously, and are an example of when it's done really well. The production quality is excellent. The commentary is very, very good. He referred to himself 2 or 3 times as an amateur at this, but in my opinion, he's definitely one of the top 2 or 3 commentators in the league, particularly in terms of being relatively neutral as a hometown commentator can be. Some of the people are very poor in that regard, but the quality has been excellent. And in terms of a production, I have no problem paying a $5 to watch Athlone stream, even for 7 or 8 minutes, because I know I'm getting value for money. I felt a little bit let down from some clubs, and I don't want to pick out individual clubs, but I felt that sometimes it's there because someone's going to look after that, rather than let's put thought into it. I think that's the big difference. But that being said, I'm really happy to see that some of the clubs, and the clubs who have embraced it, have really had some really big hits on social media this year. In terms of our attention now for the next couple of weeks, we put the cup on the back burner for a little while. Of course, the draw taking place on Tuesday evening. All the clubs involved in that, 16 clubs involved in that, will be eagerly awaiting to see who they visit next. Anyone you'd particularly like to get, or anyone you'd like to avoid in that draw?
I think we always kind of look for a home draw, really, like as a preferential draw. You can go either way. You can get the team at the top of the Premier Division, or you can get a non-league team, and your role in that game is completely different depending on who you're drawing against. So we don't really look at who we're going to be drawing against or what team or where, but we would relish a home draw, I think, against anyone, and try and get into the half then for the following round.
You mentioned top of the league, Shamrock Rovers, they're in the draw. Non-league, they're also in the draw. Which would you prefer if you were offered the choice? Shamrock Rovers or St. Pat's maybe, or the non-league opposition? Which do you prefer preparing for?
I suppose in terms of the way you've asked the question, in terms of preparing, I prefer to prepare for the Rovers team or the St. Pat's team, because you know what you're preparing for in many ways, and you can kind of get video and analysis and stuff like that. And then obviously you're coming in with an underdog tag as well, so like there's a sweeter kind of feeling if you do get a victory there, you know. But like you said, it's whoever you get, and like I just hope for the home draw, because I think that gives us a good chance no matter who it's against.
Yeah, of course, we have got through the whole show without really talking about the European games over the last couple of weeks. It's been manic, but we do have 3 teams still in Europe. Shamrock Rovers, of course, have dropped into the Europa Conference. They've got a bye in this round. They're into the 3rd round of the competition. Sligo Rovers have dropped out of that, beaten by an Icelandic opposition, FH, whereas not Pats, Bows and Dundalk have both progressed and are in pretty good positions going into the 2nd round ties this week. Happy enough with how the Irish teams are doing in Europe?
Yeah, reasonably happy. I think Liam probably be a bit disappointed that Sligo couldn't do a little bit more, but I think we probably felt Shamrock Rovers would have too much to do to continue in the Champions League, but to get another crack at it there now with the Europa. Bows have been excellent. That's a brilliant story. Games in the Aviva, fans going into the game. Obviously the first one, and now a little bit more in the second ones. Really good young players stepping up in those games as well for Bow. So that's been a brilliant story. So hopefully they can keep it going. And, you know, we desperately need that coefficient, don't we? That weird word that everybody kind of hears, but we just need to rise and give ourselves a chance year in, year out to kind of make waves and get a couple of teams even into the group stages of this new competition, or maybe into you know, one of the higher competitions somewhere along the line. Like, but for it to be a more consistent thing rather than an outlier. Like,
yeah, I think sometimes fans of clubs don't realise how important that coefficient is. It's basically points for every result you get, draws, wins. You get points across all of the teams, and they take an average. And so the further up you rise, the later you enter these competitions, the better your seeding, the better your draw, and also the better chance you have of going in. So a team like Bows winning 3 of their games so far, or 2 of the games so far, it adds coefficient points. It's very important to keep those results, positive results, taken over. And we've seen it over the years where Dundalk have managed to get better seedings. Shamrock Rovers have got better seedings because of previous results. It all kind of rolls in for the country as well as the club. Vitally important that we keep that continuing to rise. And if anything to go, I think the Europa Conference has already shown that there's great opportunities for teams to get results in European competitions over the next couple of years while that competition is in vogue. Now, let's turn our domestic attention back to the League of Ireland. Starting in the Premier Division, of course, you're out this week. You are Saturday evening hosting Derry City. It's the return to I suppose the first day of the season and winning ways against Derry, where you caught them cold. They're back now with a different management team. Thoughts of the game going into the weekend?
Yeah, I think like we're in a little bit of form, I would say. Like, we've got a couple of decent draws, got a win in the cup, so it's probably our best overall patch of form. And that probably sounds a bit desperate because it hasn't been sensational, but like we're really, really competitive in a lot of the games, nearly all the games, like, you know. So we're just trying to find that magic switch to turn a handful of these draws into a couple of wins, like, and really give us a shot in the arm for the kind of last round of games coming up, or the last round and a bit. So obviously looking forward to this one, coming off a little bit of confidence with the win and a couple of other positive results behind it. So we're hoping we can do damage. It doesn't matter who it's against at this stage, and you can't rule anybody out and just say, oh, we won't win that or we will win that or anything. We just have to go and attack whoever's in front of us, and it just so happens to be Derry this weekend. When
you won that first game, I suppose all these games are going now, did you imagine you wouldn't get another one for the next 20 at least?
No, obviously not. Like, we believe in ourselves as a team, and I mean, we've got 8 draws, I think it is, but probably I would say maybe 6 of them we should have won the game, like, that way, and a couple of defeats very, very late on could have been draws. So like, we're only a handful of kicks of a ball away from being probably 10 points better off, and that might just seem like an arbitrary kind of number that I've plucked out, but if people see in our games, like, we're very, very close in the game. So yeah, we didn't think it would be this long, but we still think we can give ourselves a chance, and like I said, the sooner the better, so we have to try and get it on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I agree with you. I've watched a good few of your games this year, and I think you've been very unlucky. Some of the 1-0 defeats or single goal defeats should have been draws and draws defeats. And I think 10 points is probably about right in terms of where you probably should be better up the table. But sometimes you get that run of the green and sometimes you don't. And unfortunately for you so far this season, it hasn't gone your way. But then things can change. Look at Waterford's form over the last couple of weeks. And speaking of Waterford, let's maybe have a look at their game. They're in Drogheda on Friday night. That's going to be a tough task for them, although they seem to be one of the form teams in the league at the moment.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one. A little bit of fallout from the cup. Lads are suspended, from Drogheda. And like you said,
Waterford have a couple of suspensions too, to be fair.
And Waterford, yeah. There might be nobody, no players, no managers, no coaching staffs. But Waterford in a good bit of form, and obviously Drogheda have had a good season so far, and an interesting game, certainly one that we'll probably have a close eye on as well, just to see which way it goes. But it could really go either way, and I suppose from our point of view, we're hoping Drogheda come out on top.
Yeah, of course, just to drag those teams around you back into that mix. Shamrock Rovers, of course, they're also in action against St. Patrick's Athletic. We're back to that first round, the repeat of the first round of games from the season. Top two sides in the league at the moment, and basically looking at the blip that Sligo have had in recent weeks in terms of the European form and the cup draw, probably the two biggest title challengers realistically at this stage.
It looks that way. I don't think Sligo are totally out of it, but this will be a big bearing on probably who goes on to win the title. It won't decide it, but it could push one or the other kind of into the driver's seat. But at the start of the season, it was a very close game. It was a very good game, the first game of the season, and I think people didn't think that Pats would still be around by the time this fixture came back around. So all credit to them, and definitely a game to watch this weekend, because they're the two best teams and they're up there for a reason.
Yeah, of course, Shamrock Rovers with that game in hand. So effectively a Rovers win on Friday night would mean 3-point lead and a game in hand, which is against Sligo Rovers, if I'm not mistaken. So realistically, a big enough gap at this stage of the season that Pats won't want to grow anymore. So they'll be looking to kind of upset the apple cart in Tala. Interesting game. I probably might pick up the games on Friday night at least. But the final game to talk about, Finn Harps and Bohemians on Friday night. Harps really struggling of late. We had Ollie on the show maybe 5-6 weeks ago now. Things were looking pretty rosy at that point. They've kind of turned and they're really struggling. Waterford only a point behind them at this stage. Can Harps do enough to stay out of the relegation spots? You're hoping that they don't, to be honest, but realistically, they're in trouble. They need a result. Will they get it on Friday?
Yeah, well, obviously, you look at Bohs and just wonder, is their head turned a little bit from European games, and specifically the occasions being in the Aviva and that as well. It's not just a kind of run-of-the-mill European game midweek. It's a big occasion to look forward to. Again, like we mentioned, more fans coming into the stadium then again. So you just might get that kind of situation where there's an eye on the other game, or a recovery from that game kind of thing, and if they progress, then an eye on the following game to come, and just a tiredness and a fatigue in general. But there's every opportunity that the Harps could pinch one there, and they do desperately need it. But again, Bohs are in good form overall, and winning is winning, so that usually kind of eradicates any kind of feelings of tiredness or fatigue. So and again, a young squad with good players, so they'll I don't think Keith would be happy if they went up and didn't put in a performance regardless of what they do in Europe.
Yeah, and then the final game of the weekend, Sligo Rovers at home to Dundalk. They've had a good record against Dundalk in recent years, particularly when their backs are to the wall. And I suppose there's people calling for Liam Buckley's head at the moment. I think that's absolutely crazy talk. But there's a bit of a pressure beginning to build in Sligo. They've set the bar probably higher than they expected themselves for the first half of the season. And now they've hit a little bit of poor form. And it's really starting to notice that the cracks are beginning to notice in the support online, at least. What's your thoughts on where they are? Will they get a result against Dundalk at the weekend? Because Vinnie Perth seems to have come in and really settled the rot at Dundalk as much as it can be done in terms of what's happening on the pitch.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one for both, because Sligo really desperately need a good result because of the last kind of 10 days or 2 weeks. I don't know how they've gone. And based on form this season and how they've played, and even the little bit of form against Dundalk in the past, you'd maybe expect a good result. But like you mentioned, Vinny's come in, steadied the ship a little bit, and Dundalk might look at it as a game and say, now our season starts if we win this one. Like, this could be where they send the message, that they're a bit more organised. They know what they're about. They want to kick on and kind of push into the higher spaces for the end of the season. And this could be the perfect game for that, to lay down that little bit of a marker. And you might catch Sligo at a bad time for them, and it could be a perfect game for Dundalk. But that's the interesting thing about these games. Like, Sligo can give themselves a boost in the arm and really attack the rest of the season, or Dundalk can really lay down a marker and say, hang on, we haven't gone anywhere yet, and put in another shift for the rest of the season. Like, so there's an interesting way of looking at that game. Like,
yeah, no, I think I haven't really had Sligo, if I'm being honest, on my top 3 list all season. I just think they've overperformed in certain areas. They've rode their luck a little bit in certain areas. I don't see them as title contenders. If they beat Dundalk at the weekend, then I think a top 3 spot is within their grasp. I think they're the kind of games they need to be winning. They've had some fantastic performances, as I mentioned. They've had some good wins over Dundalk in recent seasons, mostly due to Pat Hoban being unable to beat Ed McGinty from the spot effectively. I think he saved 4 or 5, maybe even 6 penalties in the last 2 or 3 years. So it'd be interesting to see how that pans out. If there's a penalty awarded, Ed McGinty obviously out injured at the moment for Sligo, but Luke McNicholas as equally as good a goalkeeper, and they're really blessed with really good young local talent in Sligo at the moment. But the one I think that's going to be key to the game is actually going to be John Mahon, because John Mahon hasn't featured in the last 3 or 4 weeks, and I don't think it's an accident that his demise his absence from the team has coincided with a poor run of form. I think he's probably the key that holds that whole team together defensively. Greg Bulger gets the column inches, but I think actually John Mahon is probably that key, that rock that whole team is built on, and they've really missed him the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, definitely. I think you said it. He's really important to the spine of that team, and Greg probably gets a little bit of the limelight and the praise, just maybe because of his career, and he's been around a little bit. People know who he is and the job that he does, and he does a good job. But John's a little bit more unheralded, but probably more kind of vital to what Sligo are trying to do. And I think we've talked a little bit before about the squad depth is not huge at Sligo. So when you see an injury or an absentee for a couple of weeks, that might have been where you'd see kind of a drop off, and it's coincided with this one here at the moment. So I'm sure Liam's desperate to get him back and plug him back into the back four there.
Yeah, he wasn't named in the starting team at the weekend, but then didn't show. I think there was an issue in the warm-up. But we'll see with bated breath to see how that will pan out. Quickly, we get through the first division because we are running out of time here on the show. Shells, they lost their first game of the season at UCD last weekend in the FAI Cup. We've talked about that. They host Cove Ramblers this week, themselves late winners in the Cup. Shells Cove, thoughts?
I'd expect Shells to bounce back. Difficult for Cove to come another game travelling up like after last week, back to back long trips. So I expect Shells to bounce back. Interesting to see, does it have any kind of knock on effect losing out in the cup? But I don't expect kind of would expect Shells to prevail there. Athlone
Town, we've heard from Gordon earlier in the show, they host Treaty United. There's a couple of players with Treaty who were with Athlone last year. Will they be coming in with a point to prove? I know they've already played once this season, but will they be coming in to kind of show maybe Cabsy, here's why you should have kept me?
Yeah, I think so. Like that always, every athlete in the world has that, and you see that harnessing the chip on the shoulder, as they say, like mentality. But even aside from that, I just expect Tommy's teams to be ultra competitive now from what we've seen all season. So that will actually be a good battle. That's a good game, and like we mentioned earlier in the program, First Division generally brings the inconsistency. You can't really pin who's going to win, who's going to lose, what the form is going into the game. But for Treaty to solidify that playoff spot, they'll look for something, and if Athlone are really serious about getting in there, they're going to have to start picking up some good results, particularly at home. So they'll look at it as an opportunity to get 3 points on the board.
Yeah, Wexford fresh from there. So the biggest win of the season, 3-0 over at the weekend against Cabinteely in the Cup. They host Galway United. John, looking to get back to winning ways after defeating Tala?
Yeah, and this could be interesting because I think we've seen some good progress under Ian Ryan for Wexford. That'll be a long journey for the lads from Galway, right down to the southeast of the country. So we'll see. It could be a game that they put it up to Galway, and you never know. And again, don't ever rehash what we keep saying, but it's it's a strange league. There's inconsistencies. You never know what type of forms you're going to get, and it could be one where Wexford, building off last week, think they can, get something, and I suppose Ian would even take a point, like if he could, and from a Galway point of view, like they need to keep the train moving. So realistically, they should go and win that game because of the position Wexford are in the table.
Yeah, now Cork City, they host UCD. It's a strange looking league table. They're second last in the league, but their goal difference is only -2. So they've had some big wins, and they've obviously got talent. They can go out and beat Sligo at the weekend. UCD are kind of hit and miss through the summers most of the time because of a changeover of players. Your thoughts on that? Is it an opportunity for Cork to start build some momentum, or will UCD be, I suppose, too strong for them going into this game?
Yeah, like we've seen Cork win a couple of games, like we said, like with a bit of, style and a bit of flair, but then it never kicked on and we never really seen a progression. I'd still expect UCD to kind of go and win this one, even though they haven't been in the best of form. But I think that their group of players is talented enough to go down and win the game, but if Cork want to do anything, it's kind of now, I think ideally they'd like to see, a bit of progress from their young players. Even if it doesn't result in a playoff position come the end of the year, I think a strong finish. So there's hope for the following season. So it starts now from them if they want to do that,
Yeah, no, it's a big weekend for them. In terms of the final game, then of course a local derby for you, Cabinteely and Bray Wanderers. Would you go along to that? Would you get tickets to that? Do you go to games if you're off on a Friday night, or what's your normal routine? What's your thoughts on the game as well, I suppose?
Yeah, well, I always would have went to a game if we were playing on a Saturday, but with the way things have been, and fans haven't been allowed in or whatever, not something I've looked to do. Might start again, if there is tickets available and the crowds are getting a little bit larger. But I don't know what to say about Cabinteely, because it's just they could win 5-0, they could lose 5-0, they could be 4-all. You don't really know. I think Gaz will be disappointed with last week, but so will Pat. Pat will be disappointed, but I'd say Pat just expects a bit of wild inconsistency. I don't think Gaz does. So I think Gary will be a little bit more disappointed with what happened out with Pat's and probably looking for a reaction there. And what I'm trying to say is that match could be 10-all, and I don't really know. So,
what do you put that down to? Because it's very much a Cabinteely thing, not necessarily anybody else. It's just whenever they're Cabinteely. Why are they so inconsistent? You obviously know, some of the people involved there very, very well over the years. You played at Bray with Pat for years, and some of the players you've been floating in the same circles. What's the inconsistency down to? Because it's been over seasons. It's not just a one-off.
Yeah, it's been since they came in the league almost. The only thing that I'm on the outside, so I don't know what they work on and things like that. But I would suggest whatever the style that they try and implement probably wins them some games and then loses them some games. So if they can get the upper hand using that style, they'll go on and win that game because they'll play like a train. If they can't get the upper hand and they fall behind, then they don't have the plan to kind of come back in the game and garner a result at that point. So I think it's just the way they're set up, and that it's the opposition, if they can counteract it kind of immediately and get on top, they'll stay on top. And if they can't, Cabinteely will be on top for the game, and it inevitably means they'll either win or they'll lose.
Yeah, well, listen, on that note, that's the game of football, isn't it? You either win or you lose. Busy weekend again. Best of luck to you on Saturday as you play your own game in that bid to survive in the Premier Division of the League of Ireland this season. Dean, it's been a pleasure as always, and we will chat to you again probably in 2 weeks' time when you're back with us.
Thanks, Brev.